Ælfgifu of Northampton was the first wife of King Cnut of England and Denmark, and mother of King Harold I of England. She served as Queen Regent of Norway from 1030 to 1035. Biography. Family background. Ælfgifu was born into an important noble family based in the Midlands. She was a daughter of Ælfhelm, ealdorman of southern Northumbria, and his wife Wulfrun. Ælfhelm was killed in 1006, probably at the command of King Ethel the Unready, and Ælfgifu's brothers, Ælfgifu and Wulfhart, were blinded. Wulfric Spot, a wealthy nobleman and patron of Burton Abbey, was the brother of Ælfhelm and Wulfrun. The family again came under suspicion during the invasion of England by Sweyn Forkbeard, King of Denmark, in 1013–14, and further members were charged with treachery and killed. Marriage to Cnut. When Sweyn invaded, northern peoples, many of them of Scandinavian descent, immediately submitted to him. He then married his young son Cnut to Ælfgifu to seal their loyalty. Sweyn went on to conquer the whole of England and was accepted as king, but he died in February 1014 after a reign of only 5 weeks. Ethel then sent an army which forced Cnut to flee back to Denmark, and in the opinion of historian Ian Howard, he left his wife and the baby son, Sven, the future king of Norway, behind with her family. They were anxious to make the peace with Ethel, but unwilling to hand Ælfgifu and her son over to Ethel to be murdered. So they sent the mother and child with King Sweyn's body to Denmark. Though she became pregnant again, and in 1015 or 1016 she gave birth to Harold Harefoot. In the period immediately following, she may have been given authority over some region of Denmark, perhaps that of a Danish-controlled area of the Baltic coastline. Her 2 sons were to figure prominently in the empire which the father built in northern Europe, though not without opposition. After his conquest of England in 1016, Cnut married Emma of Normandy, the widow of King Ethel. It was then regarded as acceptable to put aside one wife and take another, a practice which might be described as serial monogamy. The status of Cnut's 2 marriages and the social context in England and Scandinavia has been discussed recently by Timothy Bolton. Emma's sons, Edward and Aelfred by Ethel and Harthacnut by Cnut, were also claimants to the throne of her husband. Exactly how the second marriage affected Ælfgifu's status as Cnut's first consort is unknown, but there is no evidence to suggest that she was repudiated. Regent in Norway, Cnut sent Ælfgifu with their eldest son Sven to rule Norway in 1030. The rule was, however, so harsh that the Norwegians rebelled against them. They were driven out in 1034 at 1035, while Sven died of wounds in Denmark shortly after, probably in 1036. In Norway, where she was known as Ælfgifu in Old Norse, this period entered history as Ælfgifu's time, remembered for her severe rule and heavy taxation. In the Norwegian Agripp, for instance, the following verse is attributed to her contemporary, the skald Sigvatar, Ælfgifu's time. Long will the young man remember, when they at home ate ox's food, and like the goats ate rind. Succession crisis after the death of Cnut. Cnut died at Shaftesbury in 1035. Simeon of Durham and Adam of Bremen suggest that Cnut had reserved the English throne for Harold, while the encomium Emmi Reginae, written to defend Harthacnut's mother, Emma, claims that he had done so for Harthacnut. Ælfgifu was determined that her second son Harold should be the next English king. She had returned to England by 1036, while Emma's son Harthacnut was away in Denmark, at war with the Norwegian king Magnus I, and the Swedes under the king Anne and Jacob. Emma's other sons, Aelfred and Edward, stayed in Normandy. With help from her supporters, Ælfgifu was able to secure the throne for her son. In the view of Frank Stenton, she was probably the real ruler of England for part, if not the whole, of his reign. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle describes how Harold and his men forcefully laid claim on the treasury house in Winchester, where Cnut was buried and Emma had taken up residence. 1035, here King Cnut died, and his son Harold succeeded to the kingdom. He departed at Shaftesbury on the 12th of November, and he was conveyed to Winchester and buried. And Ælfgifu, the lady, settled inside there. And Harold said that he was the son of Cnut and the Northampton Ælfgifu, although it was not true. He sent and had taken from her all the best treasures which King Cnut possessed. Manuscript E, which is known for its Godwinist sympathies, adds a number of details, including the assembly at Oxford in 1037 at which Harold was elected King of England, and the mustering of support north of the Thames, where the power base of Ælfgifu's family was concentrated. 1036, here Cnut died at Shaftesbury, and he is buried in Winchester in the Old Minster, and soon after his passing, there was a meeting of all the councillors at Oxford, and Earl Leofric and almost all the thegns north of the Thames, and the men of the feet in London, chose Harold as regent of all England, for himself and his brother Cnut, who was in Denmark. And Earl Godwin and all the foremost men in Wessex opposed it just as long as they could, but they could not contrive anything against it. And then it was decided that Ælfgifu, Cnut's mother, should settle in Winchester with the king her son's housecarls, and hold all Wessex in hand for him. And Earl Godwin was the most loyal man. Some men said of Harold that he was son of King Cnut and Ælfgifu, daughter of Ealdorman Ælfhelm, but to many men it seemed quite unbelievable. Nevertheless, he was full king over all England during 1036. Opinion in England moved towards Harold. By August a report had reached Emma's daughter, Gunhild, at the German court that her unhappy and unjust stepmother was working to deprive Gunhild's brother, Cnut, of the kingdom by holding great feasts, and trying by argument and gifts to persuade the leading nobles to give the fealty to Harold. Emma's encomiast attributes to her even more seriously dishonest methods. He makes Ælfgifu an accomplice in the murder of Emma's youngest son, Alfred, by suggesting that she was responsible for sending a forged letter to Normandy inviting Alfred to England. The encomium Emmy Reginae also claimed that Harold was a servant's son. Ælfgifu was not recorded after 1036, apart from a possible reference to her as the lady, and it is not known when she died. Family tree.